Tip top of the morning to you. It is a lovely, beautiful, crisp, cloudy Tuesday morning here in the greater Sacramento area. The weather can't seem to make up its mind. Apparently, according to Google Weather, apparently the government shutdown is affecting the accuracy of your local forecast. Interesting. Even though the National Weather Service is open, even though all the airports are open, and last I checked, that's where they got the bulk of their weather data from. Somehow, some way, the government shutdown is affecting your local weather forecast. Whatever. So, a commenter was saying that in the comments on my last video that Earl was convicted of, not just charged with, but convicted of aggravated sexual assault. Aggravated meaning it was done with a firearm, basically. And he wasn't. He was convicted of sexual assault. He was charged with aggravated sexual assault, but the jury convicted him of sexual assault. Now, I think some people might have the wrong impression. In that video, by the way, not only did I show you the Texas DOT website, not DOT, DPS website, that shows he was convicted of sexual assault and not aggravated sexual assault, but I also showed you the jury verdict signed by the jury foreman, where the jury finds him guilty of sexual assault. If you think some county records somewhere are going to overturn not only the records of the Texas DPS, but a picture of a photograph of the actual jury verdict that was returned, then you're a moron. And if you think I'm going to allow people to say incorrect things, untrue things, and let their umbrage sway my decision, you're wrong. I defended Bao when people were saying that he hadn't served or that he was dishonorably discharged or whatever. I forget what they were saying about him, but I looked at his DD 214, and I'm not going to spread a lie. My issue with Earl is now, and has always been, that he's lying. He's lying to you, he's lying to his supporters, he's lying. What his ultimate goal is through lying, I don't know. Maybe he's just a habitual liar, but I don't like it when people get lied to. I don't like it when people lie to me. You could take exception to the fact that he's a rapist, and that's absolutely fine. I understand that. But I take exception to the fact that he's a liar. And I hold now and have always held that rapists have a First Amendment right. Morning. So, if you think that I'm upset with him because of his being a rapist, I'm not. My position is that he did the crime, he did the time, he's still on the sex offender list, and that's as close of an approximation to justice as we can get, and that's enough. The only reason why I harp on it is because he lies about it. The only reason why I harp on Black Label about his domestic violence past is because he lies about it. Look at this scar. This huge incision is from where my girlfriend stabbed me. It's totally not from my gastric operation. It's the lies. I'm aware of lots of people's criminal records, and I don't harp on them. It's the reason why is they don't lie about it. I think the world is a much better, more forgiving place if you don't lie about it. If you accept that you did it, if you're apologetic over it, if you've made your restitutions for it, I think the world has a lot of room for forgiveness. The other big issue I want to talk about this morning, I've talked about it before, but it's been a long time. We have all these people who are just desperate to find ways to make a change. And they're throwing their time in the form of call floods and filling up carts at Walmart and abandoning them, and money at these idiots who don't make changes, who don't make positive changes anyway. And I'm going to tell you once again, if you want to protect rights to photography, if you want to expand them, if you want to make it completely and perfectly legal to film outside of a prison, on prison property, outside of a prison, in a prison parking lot, in a police station parking lot, etc., etc., etc. The best way for you to do that is to get legislation passed. And this is where James Freeman would say, "Oh, you're just telling us to vote harder," and that's not what I'm telling you to do. What I'm telling you to do is get people together, change minds, talk to people, maybe start a ballot drive, a petition. You can petition your government for redress of grievances. Unlike what these idioters say, you got to redress your government. No, you dummies, you have to petition your government for redress of grievances. Learn to English. But if you want to make a change, call your state or local government. Call your assemblymen, call your legislatures, call your city council. Tell them what you think. Not hostile, but hey, I'm concerned about this thing that I saw. I'm concerned about this reaction of the police. I would like for you to pass legislation to correct it, to prevent the police from doing X, to prevent the city hall from keeping photographers out, etc. Write letters. I think letters are much more effective than phone calls because they create a permanent record. If your city of 10,000 people, if the city council gets 100 letters, they're going to extrapolate from that it's a big issue in the community. It doesn't take a whole lot of letter writing. It doesn't take a whole lot of phone calls, emails. It doesn't take a whole lot, especially if you sound like a reasonable, rational citizen who votes, because that's who they need. It's a little harder to get things done at the state level, but a lot of states have voter initiatives that they get placed on the ballot, where the voters come up with legislation. And if you sway the hearts and minds of the other voters, you can get things done. That's what Freeman doesn't get. Freeman thinks, I want it my way, and I need to ram it through my way without anybody else. Damn everybody else. I got to do it my way. And that's not how this system works. That's not how politics in this particular country work. You've got to get people on board. You've got to convince other voters. You've got to convince legislators. You're not necessarily going to convince a judge. There is a world of difference between the civil rights movement of the 60s and the photography movement. The civil rights movement of the 60s was filled with peaceful protests, and you had a bunch of images coming out of peaceful people getting sprayed down by police violently, getting attacked by dogs, getting beaten. You had sympathetic news. It was a federal issue, and you had the whole North not liking what was happening in the South, in pockets of the South, not the whole South. So you had the bulk of the nation on the side of these protesters. You had laws on the books that were on the side of these protesters. You had the whole 14th Amendment that was written specifically for the rights of the descendants of the slaves. That's not what we have here. We have assholes being assholes to citizens, and the cops being called in to try to figure out what's going on, and then they end up having to deal with these asshole auditors. You have people auditing libraries and schools and churches and synagogues. It's not sympathetic. You're going to drive the average voter away. I know there are a lot of felons in this particular movement. I know there are a lot of criminals who don't understand the process, the political process, or who are maybe alienated from it. But that being said, it's still the voters who are eventually going to make a difference. Because you have to remember, if you get enough people in this country on one side of the fence, if they want to, they can pass a constitutional amendment. They can make it a constitutional right, or they can strip a constitutional right. They can actually strip the First Amendment. Think about that. The people have the power. You may not recognize it, but the people have the power. So I still contend that if you are a serious defender of the right to photograph in public, or you want to create a right to photograph in specific places in public, then I still think that your best effort would be spent lobbying, would be spent calling your local and your state governments to try to get your representatives to pass ordinances, to pass statutes, to either create or protect your rights. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. And I also hope it makes sense that I really don't care if someone's a felon or not. And I know a lot of people like to point it out, and I love to have the information just in case they do start lying. But I'm not about exposing people for being felons just because they're felons. I just don't care. I care about liars. I care about people lying to you, the community, and saying that they're things that they're not. Anyway, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful Tuesday.